All right, so I have a story here for you guys that we really should not even be having to talk about in the year 2021 because one of America's top up-and-coming athletes who is set to compete in the Olympic Games on behalf of the United States in the sprinting, the 100-meter sprint competition, Sha'Carri Richardson, has tested positive for marijuana use and has therefore been barred from competing in the Olympics. Now, my position, if you follow my channel on marijuana legalization as well as the decriminalization and legalization of all drugs across the board and ending the failed war on drugs, has been pretty clear for a while. I obviously support marijuana legalization, the expunging of all nonviolent drug offenders, and in addition, reinvesting in communities that have been disproportionately targeted by the war on drugs. But this is an extent, or this is a realm that we don't usually have this conversation in because marijuana criminalization also bleeds into, your employer having the ability to fire you or the Olympic committees in the United States having the ability to bar you from competition. So I'm going to run you through the timeline here a little bit. We're going to get into a clip from something that she had to say in order to justify why she was using marijuana, which she really should never have to do. But here we go. So Sha'Carri Richardson breaks the collegiate record in the women's 100 meters. So this is what she did a couple of months ago. I guess it was earlier in June, where she shattered the 100-meter record. So obviously this is somebody we would want to be competing on our behalf at the Olympic Games. Then Sha'Carri Richardson wins the women's 100 meters at the Olympic track and field trials. So doing phenomenally well, qualifies for the Olympics. And then she's suspended from the Olympics because of this positive drug test. And so here's some of the details on that. While Richardson's suspension will be over, it's only a 1-month suspension, but while Richardson's suspension will be over by the time the Olympic track and field competition begins, the positive test erased her Olympic trials performance, the one that we just talked about, in the women's 100, meaning she will not run in the event. And unlike the Olympic selection processes of other countries, USA track and field's procedures leave little room for discretion over who qualifies. They dictate that the top 3 finishers in a given event at the trials qualify for the Olympics, provided their performances reach the Olympic standard. And so obviously, because of the way that the US track and field committees and stuff have their rules oriented, she was disqualified from being in that top 3, even though she qualified to be in the top 3, and she's been replaced now. So it doesn't seem like she's going to be able to compete in the 100-meter race at the Olympics. So absolutely fucking ridiculous. But she went on USA Today to discuss what happened and discuss why she was smoking marijuana, which honestly she should not even be having to justify this to anybody, let alone having to go on national media and discuss this in front of the entire country, because it's personal, and she was dealing with a lot of family stuff, obviously. But let's go ahead and hear what she had to say on this so we can understand where she's coming from.
I thank you for being on, and I know you wanted to tell your story. So tell me, what happened? What led up to this positive test?
Just honestly, I want to take responsibility for my actions. I know what I did. I know what I'm supposed to do. No, I'm allowed not to do, and I still made that decision. But not making an excuse or looking for any empathy in my case, but just, however, being in that position of my life, finding out something like that, something that I would say is probably one of the biggest things that have impacted me positively and negatively in my life when it comes to dealing with the relationship I have with my mother. So that definitely was a very heavy topic on me, and people don't understand what it's like to have to, or people do. We all have our different struggles. We all have our different things we deal with. But to put on a face, to have to go in front of the world and put on a face and hide my pain, like, who are you, or who am I to tell you how to cope when you're dealing with a pain or you're dealing with a struggle that you've never experienced before or that you've never thought you would have to deal with? Like, who am I to tell you how to cope? Who am I to tell you that you're wrong for hurting? So I think just honestly, just leading up to that, dealing with my mental health, dealing with my mental as is with leading up to the games, every time stepping on the track, definitely expected to be a record-breaking time or something like that. So just with that, pressure in itself was also just another thing. With this actually been my first full professional career, my first full professional circuit this year due to the pandemic. So just considering all of that put together, long time, my agent, my sponsor, my sponsorship, my family, knowing we dealing with all of this stuff. So
Sha'Carri,
Right. So there was her explanation there. She's talking about the fact that her biological mother had recently passed away and that she was trying to deal with the coping and used marijuana, obviously, as part of her coping mechanisms in dealing with that. But listen, she shouldn't need to have to justify this to anyone. Again, it doesn't matter the reasoning of why she was using marijuana. Marijuana should be fully decriminalized. It should be legalized for everybody to be using. And the stupidest point about all of this is that the entire point of why you would have regulations on who is able to make it to the Olympic team would be to prevent performance enhancing drugs, right? That would be the only reason why you would bar someone from competition. Marijuana is not a fucking performance enhancing drug. It's nowhere close to being a performance enhancing drug. And if you've ever smoked marijuana, which clearly the people who made these rules have not, if you've ever smoked marijuana, then you would know this, okay? When I smoke weed, I want to sit on the couch and eat a bunch of junk food, okay? It doesn't make you the fastest person on earth. This is absolutely ridiculous. But her using this in her own personal life and then to them take that and use it to bar her from athletic competition, which is completely irrelevant to the marijuana usage, then it's just absolutely ridiculous. It shows that we're significantly behind the times now, and I just honestly can't believe that we're still having to deal with this type of shit in 2021. So I wanted to give you a take here from the weed expert, internationally known as the weed expert of the world, Seth Rogen here. So he says, the notion that weed is a problematic drug is rooted in racism. It's insane that Team USA would disqualify one of this country's most talented athletes over thinking that it's rooted in hatred. It's something that they should do, that they should be ashamed of. Also, if weed made you fast, I'd be Flojo. So yeah, Seth Rogen pointing out the obvious, right? One of the biggest weed smokers in the world. Weed does not make you faster, okay? That's not how weed works. And it's something that you should be able to do, just like you can go and have a glass of wine or a glass or a beer at the end of the day. You should be able to go and smoke a blunt or go and smoke a bowl if you want at the end of the day. And the government, these private institutions or the Olympic committees should not have any say in the matter, okay? It's something that you're doing on your own personal time. It doesn't affect anybody else in a negative way. And it's certainly not a performance enhancing drug. So there's literally no justification for why she should have been banned in this circumstance at all. And to get to the point that he's making there about it being rooted in racism. So here, straight from the Nixon administration. So marijuana, alongside many other drugs, were criminalized under the Nixon administration and subsequent administrations after that continued the war on drugs. But just to give you a little piece of history here as to why marijuana is illegal in the first place, let's take it straight from the Nixon administration that criminalized it. So there was an interview that was done with one of his main domestic policy people in his administration, and they say in a 1994 interview, Mr. Ehrlichman said, "You want to know what this was really all about?" He went on, quote, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and the black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." So yeah, of course they did. The entire reason why all of these drugs have been criminalized and heavily policed and regulated in the ways that they have been was because of racist policy, okay? It was literally, explicitly, straight from the mouths of the people who created the laws themselves, created along racial lines, created along motivations that were against the anti-war left, etc., etc. So none of these drugs should be criminalized and treated in the way that they are, whether it's through our policing and our prison institutions, or whether it's through things like the USA Olympic committees, or even if it's private employers, okay? Nobody, the government, your private employers, or the USA Olympic team should have a say in something that you do on your own personal time that isn't a performance enhancing drug or whatever, and that doesn't affect anybody else in a negative way. So that's my take on it. This is absolutely ridiculous. She should be immediately reinstated, and they should abandon this rule completely. Marijuana is not a performance enhancing drug. It shouldn't bar you from the Olympic to compete in the Olympics. So it's absolutely ridiculous. This is honestly embarrassing for the United States, and on top of that, we're losing out on an athlete who is just starting their career and could have represented us at the Olympics in a serious way and brought home some medals for us. So, you know, it doesn't make sense from any angle, and it's just an international embarrassment.